have a very interesting discussion that I would say it's a bit different, maybe from others that we have seen, since we will have speakers that usually maybe don't tend to speak so often to each other. We'll have a panel of representatives from different governments of Guatemala, Burkina Faso, also Somalia, and Egypt. So I think it will be very interesting to that exchange of knowledge and ideas on what the different countries and the different governments are putting forward regarding the links between desertification and human mobility. So I personally can't wait to hear the panel. So then we will start with some welcoming remarks from the head of the office of the IOM in Saudi Arabia and the director of the Islamic Philanthropy Fund Office, Mr. Ashraf Al-Nur. So please welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much, Ignacio. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Distinguished panelists, participants, it is my pleasure to be joined by all of you here today and address this side event on desertification and human mobility dialogue. This is very important discussion. And at the outset, let me welcome the focus that you are taking on an evidence-based and a scientific approach to inform policy makers and by extension practitioners. That is very important because on one hand, we need to understand the connections, and these are close connections between drought and land degradation. So that connection needs to be understood very well on one hand. On the other hand, we need to look more closely at the intersections between internal displacement, which often is the undesired outcome of desertification, land degradation, and the larger migration phenomena. So this is the context in which this panel discussion is taking place. And noting that it is important that in your deliberation, you don't take a narrow approach. You shouldn't just focus on the managing the environmental aspects of the challenges that you are looking at. It will be more important to take a more broader approach that will take into account a whole range of issues, including humanitarian relief, transitional programming, and the longer development linkages. And that is particularly important as many of us operate in fragile settings, but also in post-natural disaster situations. The COP13 and COP15 gave recognition to these interconnections between desertification, drought, land degradation, and the drive of people, or the out-migration of people, or the internal displacement of people. And they recognize that together they represent a major driver of internal migration and displacement of population. And if we look at the figures, at least the report from the IDMC last year, it points to the fact that close to 500,000 people have been displaced as a result of a combined factor of drought, land degradation, and desertification. And not only that, the report also recognized that these forces together continue to be the fourth largest driver of migration globally. On our part as IOM, we looked at some countries like Libya, and we done some assessment which confirmed the same: climate change, desertification, and the environmental changes that are happening are really among the key drivers that push people to move from one place to another. In Iraq, we looked at the same. And interestingly, we also extended that a little bit to look at the vulnerability aspects and the people that would be hit hard by most of that. I think it is also important to look at the combined impact of these factors, desertification, drought, land degradation, on the agricultural sector, where millions of people around the world are prone or at the risk of losing their livelihoods. And it's not just the loss of livelihoods. Many of them, they end up moving out of rural areas to urban areas, and hence also increase urbanization. So the loss is double, because on one hand, people lose their livelihoods, and on the other hand, many of them also lose their homes as they move from rural to urban areas, and they need to make an early start. So this is more or less, I believe, the context that you are looking at in brief, but how we can take it forward. What is the key milestones and actions that we need to keep in mind as we move together to address these challenges? One of them is certainly taking what we call a whole of government and community-based approach, especially in drought-prone areas, in order to strengthen the resilience. I think the communities are really the one who takes the brunt of whatever happened, and it's important that to strengthen whatever you call it, coping mechanism, their resilience, their ability to steadfast and move on. So that is very important. Besides that, we need also to improve the environmental land management or land management reforms. Land management reforms will also be a key thing to look at. So this is one. Second, it will also be important to take an integrated approach. That integrated approach will combine preventive measures. Preventive measures would be good forecast, disaster risk reduction, disaster management, and combine that also with the ownership. The community, the government, the subnational level government and entities, they have to take ownership of the response and the preparations, build the capacity and enhance local knowledge, and introduce the land reform measures, but also some of the inputs that will make these communities very resistant. I remember in Somalia, in northeastern Kenya, the Dadaab area, impacted by drought in 2013, we introduced drought-resistant seeds for the people to plant. And not only that, we helped some of the population to remove the soft cattle, the sheep, and introduce goats, which are more resilient. So these are just small examples, but for a small community and a small household entities, this is a whole change, because this is about being or not being, surviving or not surviving. The third thing that we could look at is taking on migration, not as a survival strategy. Very often, people look at migration when the people already hit and they moved out to some area. And then it will be how we could do the care and maintenance, the life saving, and all that. It will be good if we look at migration as part of the adaptation strategies to the environmental and climate change issues. Then we can plan ahead. Then we can look at how we could do that. Interesting example that I came across when I was in New York representing the IOM office to the UN. The president of Kiribati at the time, he came to me. I said, look, I need to join IOM. I said, why you want to join IOM as a member state? He said, because I was just surprised, a president coming to my office and saying that this is important. I said, look, your organization is very important for us, because my country, small island, is submerging. The sea is just coming. So I already bought a small piece of land in another nearby island. And if things happen, I need to move them out. So that is one thing. Second thing, he said, we need to send more of our people to Australia and increase the work permits for those people to go and work in Australia, in New Zealand. And that also will be helpful because they can send remittances back. And also he said it's important also to strengthen the link with the diaspora, because if something went wrong, the fairest, respondents is our diasporas. So this is what we call making migration as part of the adaptation strategies to climate change. I will extend that a little bit since I spoke about migrants. I think we need to maximize their roles, their contributions. Remittances is just one part of it, but the know-how, the knowledge, how to rebuild the communities, how to rebuild better, how to bring in new technologies, all of that will be quite helpful. And also besides that, and this is the last and not the least, we have the Global Compact for migration. It's a tool that we can put to good use and will help us to do better. So in short, it is my pleasure to join you, say a few words. And in closing, I think this is an opportunity for all of us to come together, address the drivers of migration, mitigate some of them. So this is one call for action. The second call for action is for us to come together and increase the engagement on South-South basis. I think that is very important. And the third, bring in what I would call a whole of government and community approach. I thank you. I thank the organizer for this opportunity, and I wish you a good and constructive deliberation. Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Asfar El-Nur, for your welcoming remarks. I think it's very important that we have IUM today in this conversation about human mobility. So now, since the conversation says about scientific evidence for informing policymakers, I will give a brief presentation. Since we're already running a bit out of time, I will be very brief and skip some slides, but just to give a taste of some of the work that we have done, CGIAR, with the IUM and also with UNHCR, that is also here present in the audience, to then give room to the most important part of today's side event, which is the conversation and exchange of knowledge and ideas between the different policymakers. So, yeah. Well, first of all, I think I didn't introduce myself. So my name is Ignacio Madurga Lopez. I'm part of the Alliance of Biodiversity and CIAT and the focal point in Latin America of the CGIAR focused climate security, which is one of the largest consortiums that works for food security across the globe. And specifically, I'm part of the team that works on climate security, also touching upon issues related to human mobility, migration, and displacement. First of all, I wanted to present to you a tool platform that we have recently launched, which is called the Climate Security Observatory. The Climate Security Observatory, or CSO, it's a decision support tool for policymakers that gathers all the scientific evidence that we are building on the climate security nexus. Until now, it has been mainly focusing on climate peace and security, but since we saw that human mobility, both migration and displacement, are often at the heart and are part of these pathways that link the climate with the insecurity, with the violence, with the conflicts, we are now updating the platform to a CSO 2.0, in which we're integrating a lot more data, also benefiting a lot from the data that is collected by the governments and also by IOM and UNHCR. And we try to answer four main questions. How are these risks interlinked? Climate, peace, security, human mobility. Then we want to understand where are the most vulnerable areas where these risks are occurring simultaneously, what we call the hotspots. Then in these hotspots, who are the most vulnerable people? By answering these three questions, we want to help with the prioritization and the targeting of investments, of programs, of the different government agencies, also international corporations and UN. And finally, the what question, probably the most important one, focused on what needs to be done to tackle this interconnected risk. Right now, we cover up to 20 countries. Most of them are located in Africa. In Central America, where I work, as of now, there's only Guatemala, and we are going to be adding Honduras in 2025. and also some countries in Asia, such as the Philippines or Pakistan. The platform, as I mentioned, is already available, but next year we will be updating it and putting a lot more focus on the migration and displacement angles. The platform is already supporting different policymaking processes and policy design across the globe. For instance, in the case of the region where I work in Central America, we have already supported the update of the climate change regional strategy with some geospatial analysis maps and integrating some of this evidence into the strategy. Also, in the case of Africa, for instance, in Zambia, we have supported the green growth strategy and also the NAP. In the case of Kenya, we've also supported the National Climate Change Adaptation Plan, including also with some regional organizations. With IGAD, we have also worked with them in the update of the agriculture climate adaptation strategy, where we have been integrating some of this scientific evidence to inform the different countries and regional bodies. We also had the honor to speak at the UN Security Council, where we were able to talk about this interconnection and interlinkages between climate, peace, security, also looking at the role that human mobility dynamics play. For instance, also in the case of the partnership with UNHCR, with which we signed an MOU this year, we supported them in the strategic plan for climate action that they launched this year, specifically with the building of a composite climate risk index that integrates projections related to drought, temperature increase, floods, and also governance to account for the coping capacity of the countries. And we were able to connect that with the data of people of concern of UNHCR, as we can see in the red map at the bottom of the slide, where we see the darkest red are the areas that are going to be most affected by climate risk. And then the dots, the black dots, are data from refugees, from asylum seekers, from different types of displaced, internal displaced population. And as we can see, in many occasions, both intersect, the climate and the vulnerable people that are displaced. Also, recently, with the NoScape report that UNHCR launched, we were able to also support with some geospatial analysis maps, where we see that some of the areas that are considered as severe or extreme in terms of climate-related hazards, when looking at the projections, we also see at the lines, which are data related to conflict and violence-related displacement. So what we see here is that many of the people that are displaced by this violence, this conflict, or also extreme weather events are then moving into areas where they're also vulnerable to other types of risk, including mainly climate-related risk and extreme weather events. In fact, out of the 100 million forcibly displaced people that are in the world, 75% of them, which accounts for 90 million, as the report says, are in areas that are considered highly vulnerable to climate hazards. And then last but not least, I will briefly bring some insights from a work that we did with IOM in Guatemala, which is funded by the USAID project on addressing the root causes of irregular migration in Guatemala. The objective of this project was to identify the main drivers of irregular migration and then look at which of these drivers and how and to what extent they were being exacerbated by climate variability and climate change, and how this changed from the different groups that are present. I mean, like the youth, the elderly, the men, the women, the indigenous people. This report is not yet published, but we're just spending the last green light from USAID, and hopefully in the next few weeks it will be available online. I'll make sure to share it with all of you. We went to 4 communities in Guatemala based on the hotspots of climate, security, and irregular migration. We use data from IOM on return population as a proxy for irregular migration. We also look at data from gender-based violence from the National Institute of Migration, and we were able to select 4 communities and conduct qualitative fieldwork based on ethnographic approaches, also on focus group discussions and semi-structured interviews. And out of this work that was conducted this year, we identified a series of drivers of irregular migration, some of which are not related whatsoever with desertification of our climate, like the lack of opportunities for the youth that have studied careers such as education or mechanics or nursery, doctors that don't find a job in their communities of origin and then decide to migrate. Also those related to new aspirations and desires of family reunification, which are not exacerbated in any way by climate or by desertification or drought. That's why they're in blue. But then we looked at other drivers such as the low income or food insecurity, which are clearly exacerbated by climate impacts. In fact, also, for instance, indebtedness, we saw in many occasions in these 4 communities, farmers who ask for loans in order to be able to work their lands, to get agricultural input and all the tools that they need. And then after a few months, the drought hits, they are left with barely any maize or beans whatsoever to sell, or also the coffee harvest fails, and then they are unable to pay the debt back. And the only way that they see that they can really repay this loan is to sell all what they have left, the land or the house, or use it as a collateral to ask for a loan, and then migrate to the US to get there the revenue that they need to ask for this loan. There is also a connection that we saw with gender-based violence that, of course, we know it's related to other aspects that go beyond climate and drought, but we did see that it was exacerbated with in the periods of drought, of strong drought. The women in the focus group discussions and the interviews, they were saying that the gender-based violence and the problems in the households was being exacerbated in periods of strong drought, such as the one that happened recently last year, but also the one especially in 2014 and 2015 that hit the entire dry corridor. I think that was captured very well in one of the quotes from a woman of the community of Las Uvas that says that when the maize dries up, the love dries up, which of course makes the reference to that impact on gender-based violence in the households. I will not go into detail here since I want to leave some room for the panel. So I think I will just mention that the community and the research also looked not just at the problems, but also at the local solutions that the communities think that are useful and could be interesting to develop to combat climate vulnerabilities, desertification, drought, but also to combat other issues related that are drivers of irregular migration, including the gender-based violence, including economic insecurity, food insecurity, water insecurity. And some of those relate to water irrigation, to increase water efficiency and water stress reduction, and be able to increase productivity and maybe also transition for only being able to harvest maize and beans to maybe other vegetables and fruit that have a higher value in the market. Also other solutions that relate to climate smart agriculture practices, also to increase productivity, restore soil health, and also contribute to climate adaptation. And finally, the organic agricultural inputs to restore soil health, reduce chemical contamination, increase soil fertility, and then also to reduce the need for those chemical inputs, which, as we know, in the past few years and following the war in Ukraine, has increased a lot in the price, and that has highly impacted countries like Guatemala and others in Africa and Central America that that usually get their agricultural inputs from countries like Ukraine, Belarus, and also Russia. Finally, we are also putting forward a new approach of the Climate Smart Village Plus, which draws from a work that we've done in the past decade as part of the Climate Change, Agriculture and Food Security Program of the CGIAR, in which we had interventions in many different countries across Africa, also Central America and Asia, including Senegal, including Burkina Faso, Guatemala, Nicaragua, India, where we developed this climate smart village as a place of co-creation of knowledge practices, climate smart agriculture practices, where we're able to test them, evaluate them with the farmers, with the local organizations, agriculture producers organizations and private sector to increase productivity and increase also the sustainability of the rural livelihoods of these people. The interesting part of these places of co-creation is that rather than just coming with certain practices and sort of teaching or telling the people what to do, we were able to co-create those innovations together, to test them, evaluate them in a way that it's also visible and accessible to all kinds of people and farmers, and then through that work in connection with the local organizations, be able to upscale it to other regions and parts of the country. We are putting this, we are suggesting this approach of the Climate Smart Village Plus in different regional programs proposals, including one with the CGIAR for Central America, and also very interesting with UNHCR in a call from the African Development Bank, where we are suggesting to build climate smart settlements for refugees in host communities in Ethiopia and Somalia, where we want to leverage all this work and adaptation with also the great work that the humanitarian work that UNHCR is leading, to also be able to embed some of these climate adaptation and resilience approaches and climate smart agriculture practices into the refugee settlements of the two countries. So I will stop there. Thank you. And then and then I want to call to the stage Mr. Héctor Vela, Advisor for Combating Land Degradation, Desertification and Drought of the Climate Change Directorate of the Ministry of Environment and Natural Resources. Also, Mr. Lazar Dangabu, Water and Forestry Inspector of the Ministry of Sustainable Development of Burkina Faso. Thank you for joining us. Also, Mashallah Ali Goley, Advisor for Combating Land Degradation and Desertification and Drought of the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change of the Federal Government of Somalia. Thank you for joining us today. And last but not least, Hala Yusri, Deputy Head of Rural Women Committee at the National Council for Women at Egypt. Thanks a lot for joining us today. So we will be asking a round of questions to the three panelists, and then we will also leave some room for questions and interactions. So I think the most interesting thing of today is also to hear about how these different approaches and actions that have been developed in the different countries can come together, and also we can all probably hopefully learn from each other. So Guatemala, Burkina, Egypt, and Somalia are located in some of the most climate and environmental vulnerable regions in the world, including the Central American Dry Corridor, the Horn of Africa, the Sahel. And each of these countries, there's also a strong presence of different types of human mobility dynamics that I'm sure you will be mentioning in your interventions. So to start, could you please tell us a bit about how these vulnerabilities converge in your country? How are desertification, climate change impacts, including, of course, drought, are connected to conflict, to security, and especially to human mobility? And what challenges does this create for your country? We will start with Héctor from the Guatemala Ministry of Environment, please.
Buenas tardes.
Oh, and sorry, I didn't mention it, but some of the interventions will not be in English. So we will let the panelists do their intervention, and then I will be translating to English. Thank you.
Bueno, muchas gracias, Ignacio. Un gusto estar aquí con semejantes compañeros Básicamente, bueno, primero, muchas gracias por permitirme dar la intervención en español, pero también es una de las formas de que quiero expresar ciertas ideas en Guatemala. Continuando con el contexto que decía el colega, pues básicamente el tema de certificación nosotros no solamente lo vemos del lado del tema de tierras. Guatemala es uno de los países más vulnerables ante los efectos del cambio climático en los últimos años ha figurado dentro de esa lista. Además de eso, también Guatemala es uno de los países megadiversos del mundo. Es uno de es el país más poblado de Centroamérica. Y básicamente nosotros tenemos todos los tipos de migraciones, migraciones externas, migraciones internas, tenemos corredores, somos el corredor también de migración entre América y Norteamérica, y básicamente todos los tipos de migraciones nos afectan. Además de eso, un estudio del 2019 de la convención menciona que Guatemala tiene un poco más del 40% de tierras degradadas. Además de eso, la Universidad del Valle de Guatemala menciona que Guatemala aproximadamente tiene el 70% de tierras degradadas. Así que vemos un tema muy importante en esas dinámicas. Además de eso, un estudio del Banco Mundial menciona que o proyecta que en el 2050 vamos a tener una migración en Centroamérica y México de un poco menos de 4 millones de personas. Y también vamos a ver, un estudio menciona que, que dentro de esa migración también va a haber aproximadamente de unos 200,000 personas de migración interna que se da mucho en Guatemala, así que son factores que a nosotros nos preocupan, por lo tanto tenemos que hacer distintas acciones en el contexto de estos temas. Además, Ignacio mencionó un estudio que todavía no está público, pero con apoyo del CGIAR, hubo un estudio en la cual pues figura o vincula el tema de tanto la desertificación como la sequía, uno de los principales factores de la migración en Guatemala. Así que podría dejarlo por aquí.
All right. So, Mr. Hector mentioned that Guatemala has been ranked in the past few years as one of the most vulnerable countries in the world to the effects of climate change. It is located, as he mentioned, in the Central American Dry Corridor, and it is also one of the most populous countries in Central America, and also one of the most mega diverse in the world in terms of biodiversity, and that it experienced all types of human mobility. That he mentioned rural-urban migration, also internal displacement, migration to the United States, and also regional migration. Some of it is related to seasonal migration. In a study from 2019 of the UNCCD, indicated that over 40% of Guatemala's territory is degraded, if I understood correctly. And there is also another study from a University of Guatemala, Universidad del Valle, that estimates that land degradation is affecting at least 70% of the country. And then also the World Bank study from 2018, which I believe is the Groundswell report study, mentioned that by 2050, there will be in the region up to 4 million climate migrants. And in the case of Guatemala, the projection is around 200,000 migrants. Then he also referred to the study that I mentioned before, then that several government entities in Guatemala were able to listen to the results in some events that we had together there. That this study looked at the connections between climate impacts and irregular migration, but also that for some people that don't have the means, so the most vulnerable, the most poor people, they don't migrate externally to the US, but rather the climate impacts and the droughts make people migrate internally, seasonally, especially to the coffee farms for a few months and then come back to their homes. And the people that have a bit more assets, then they can't afford to sell some of these assets and migrate to the US. So I hope more or less I captured all the points. Now we will give the floor to the representative of the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change of Somalia, Mr. Halai Yusri. Please, the floor is yours to answer the question. Oh, sorry. Yeah. No. Mashla Ali Kole. Sorry. My bad.
Thank you. Good evening, panelists and other participants. It's very great, for me to join this, discussion today. And I want to tell you that Somalia is located Horn of Africa. And, Somalia is, like desert country, is arid and semi-arid country, which have been affected, climate consequences. And Somalia is depending on, it's agro-pastoralists. So, and most of you, they have, farmers and also livestock. These have caused that to have seen that the more impact from, the climate consequences and land degradation and desertification. For the last, decades, we have lost millions of animals and many people have been displaced and immigrated their, communities to seek for livelihoods and to get, something to survive their lives. So that Somalia, is a very fragile country. So many international organizations and, Somali government have been supporting these communities to help them and, to take back their livelihoods. And still, the long road have been affected, the livelihoods of the Somali people. Mostly, droughts and as well as sometimes the floods have destroyed many cities, including, the South Central, which is mostly, depending on, agriculture as well as livestock. And the southern part, as well as they are depending on, livestock. But many families have lost their, livelihoods, including, all, what they have livestock is like camels, goats, something like that. And they have displaced, and immigrated to the cities, like the capital city, which, they have been seeking, to survive it. As well as Somalia, there is, water scarcity sometimes, which also, intensifies the conflict between the people to, to compete, to fight, the resource. So this also caused, to make, some people to immigrate for their beloved land. And actually, also there is food and insecurity. And the government, I think, is very weak and can't manage these things. So these things have, took part, to affect the human mobility and livelihoods, all of them. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mashla Ali. Now we will give the floor to Hala Yusri from Egypt, please.
Thank you very much for your invitation. I just got the invitation just a while ago. I knew about it, but I was not sure that I will be participating. Actually, climate change, desertification, it's a very irritating phenomena in Egypt. You know that most of, like 95% of Egypt are desert areas. And we are suffering from scarcity of water, scarcity of arable lands, and with a very big number of inhabitants. We're 110 inhabitants plus like 15 million of refugees coming from Africa, either to stay in Egypt or to pass by, are passing by through to Europe or United States. And because also we are in the middle of a very stressful area, on the left side, we have Libya with all these stresses. Down there in Sudan, lots of stresses and almost civil war. And on the right, we all know about it with all the stresses in Gaza. So we are in the middle of stress region. And we do open our doors always to our friends from every part that is making like 11 to 15 million of, we don't call them refugees, by the way, we call them guests. So it's with all the respect and dignity, we have them, and we are dealing with them as if they are full Egyptian citizen. And this is really a plus. I am very proud of my country doing so. We don't put them in camps or tents. They live among us. Even any privilege that the Egyptian gets, we give them same privilege. We are dealing with them exactly like full Egyptians. They get the health care, they get they buy things with the same price we buy, you know, and so we are dealing with all our visitors like they are full Egyptian nationalities. In Egypt, we have a strategy to combat desertification, where we are dividing the whole country into 4 regional areas. On the north, by the Mediterranean Sea. And the second one is Sinai and the Eastern Desert. And the third one is the Western Desert. And the fourth one is the Delta and the River Nile. And the causes of desertification in each and every part, it's different from the other one. So we have a strategy in Egypt to combat desertification, and we are submitting all the time the progressive report to to update the knowledge and to update the achievements that the government and the civil society is doing, all around Egypt. We all know that scarcity of water, scarcity of land leads to food insecurity. And with that increasing number, and with that stress in the demographic map, we are suffering a lot. So desertification is a very stressful factor in Egypt. That's why we are extending our hand for partnerships, for lots of regional projects, so we can increase arable lands. And this is what we're doing. We have a plan of reclaiming like a million fadan or million hectare, to all around Egypt, to secure food for all inhabitants in Egypt. And we are doing a great job in water desalination, for reusing the water. We have we have mega projects concerning water and reuse of water. So it's really coming to be very distinguished projects all over Egypt. This the percentage rate of the demographic growth in Egypt is extremely high. So, our number of citizens are increasing rapidly, and we are planning to stabilize in a good number, in a good percentage, the demographic increase. But this is also needs a lot of efforts. All that causes a stress on the food security, and the food security leads to a stress in livelihood and all the services with increasing number of refugees. So all that affects to the socio-economic status of citizen. We are trying to get far from the poverty line. We are trying to find a lot of job opportunities, to help them secure their lives. And but on the micro level, these communities are getting lots of consequences of getting their children out of their schools, having diseases that they cannot afford curing from these diseases. The government is doing a great job, and we have proudly announced it. We have proudly made a national presidential initiative called Haya Karima, means decent life, where this decent life is targeting 4,500 villages. In the Sustainable Development Goals, they are talking about sustainable cities, but no one mentions sustainable villages. True? That's why, our presidential initiative targeting more than 4,500 villages all around Egypt with infrastructure, with capacity development for the villagers, women and youth. And they customize the services that it's provided to each village and each region according to their needs, according to their problems, according to the relevant advantages of these villages. So we are trying, to give a collective package of services that empower our villagers, to be able to cope the negative consequences of village. And we are reclaiming million of Fadan. So we are greening the villages and help them go for the value chain approach. So they would not just sell their products, but they go for industrialization of their products as a way of combating desertification as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Feel free for all the panel if you want to comment with your intervention on something that has been previously mentioned, or connect with some of the ideas of the actions and the solutions that have been implemented. Now, to end the first round of questions of the panel, please, Mr. Lazar from the Ministry of Sustainable Development of Burkina Faso, if you could please tell us a bit about how this problematic looks like in Burkina. Thank you.
Voilà, merci bien pour l'opportunité que vous nous donnez de parler un peu du cas du Burkina. Voilà, je donne un peu le contexte climatique du Burkina. Nous sommes dans la zone sahélienne, voilà, où la pluviométrie n'est pas très favorable. Et la majorité de la population burkinabé vit de l'agriculture et de l'élevage, et aussi les autres utilisations des terres, comme la récolte des produits dans les forêts. Donc, nous sommes dans un climat pas trop favorable. Et depuis un certain temps, on fait face à la sécheresse. Depuis 1970, que les premières manifestations de la sécheresse se sont présentées au Burkina avec beaucoup de de dégâts sur l'environnement. C'est exacerbé aussi par les changements climatiques. La situation nationale fait état d'environ 5 millions de terres dégradées. Et ça, c'est la situation en 2013. Après 2013, on n'a pas pu faire une évaluation pour voir quelle est la situation encore des terres dégradées. Donc, face à cette dégradation, comme on l'a dit, les populations trouvent une solution qui est à migrer, à quitter les zones difficiles pour aller vers d'autres zones qui sont favorables à l'agriculture, à l'élevage, pour pouvoir avoir les moyens de subsistance. Donc, la migration devient comme une solution à la dégradation des terres. Mais le problème, c'est que aussi les zones d'accueil où les populations vont trouver refuge aussi se dégradent, puisque les mêmes mauvaises pratiques qui se déroulaient où les zones sont dégradées se répètent aussi dans les zones d'accueil. Et ça crée des conflits entre les populations qui résidaient, les autochtones, et les nouvelles populations qui viennent s'ajouter, fuyant la catastrophe de la sécheresse là où elles étaient. Et une étude a été faite avec le financement de l'OIM pour pouvoir un peu voir comment est-ce que le phénomène se manifeste et qu'est-ce que sont les solutions qui peuvent être proposées. Et c'était dans 2 régions. Le nord du Burkina, dont les populations quittent plus le nord qui est aride, vers le sud qui est plus favorable à l'agriculture et à l'élevage. On a eu l'appui de l'OM, l'Organisation internationale de la migration, pour pouvoir faire cette étude dans 2 zones. Et les résultats ont prouvé que les migrants quittent les zones défavorables. 80% de ces migrants, 80% de ces migrants sont des gens qui vivent dans le milieu rural, vivant de l'agriculture. Et dans ces 80% des migrants, les âges sont compris entre 18 et 40 ans. Ce sont ces personnes qui quittent. Or, ce sont eux qui sont les bras valides. Donc, ça fait que ces régions où ces bras valides quittent, ce sont des régions qui se meurent progressivement. Et parmi les migrants, il y a une faible partie des femmes, normalement 16% des femmes qui quittent. Sinon, la plupart des femmes restent toujours dans les zones. C'est les hommes qui vont chercher de quoi nourrir les femmes qui restent dans les zones. Donc, face à cette situation, le pays a réfléchi à plusieurs mécanismes pour pouvoir trouver des solutions. Et on a eu l'appui de votre organisation CGIAR pour pouvoir faire des études et proposer des solutions. Et parmi les solutions, il y a des solutions qui sont au niveau national à travers des documents stratégiques que le Burkina a élaborés, voilà, pour pouvoir trouver une solution à ce phénomène de migration lié à la dégradation des terres, à la sécheresse et à la désertification. Et pour ce faire, on a le plan national de développement économique et social, qui est un document d'orientation où tous les projets et programmes qui doivent lutter contre la désertification et trouver des solutions à la migration doivent se référer comme document de référentiel. Le plan stratégique, voilà, ce plan stratégique. Il y a aussi la CDN. Comme on sait que la sécheresse, la dégradation des terres est intimement aussi liée au changement climatique. C'est vrai que le phénomène est là, c'est dû souvent aux actions de l'homme, mais c'est exacerbé aussi par les changements climatiques. Donc aussi, dans les documents qui traitent des changements climatiques, il est prévu aussi des actions de mitigation pour pouvoir trouver des solutions à la restauration des terres, pour pouvoir fixer les populations sur place et éviter le phénomène de migration. Au-delà de ça, il y a le plan national d'adaptation. La CDN, c'est pour prévenir, mais le problème est déjà là. Il faut bien s'adapter dans les milieux. Le plan aussi propose des actions pour pouvoir permettre aux populations de pouvoir résister. Donc, l'ensemble des projets d'adaptation doivent être liés à ce plan national d'adaptation au changement climatique. Donc, beaucoup de projets actuellement sont mis en œuvre dans le cadre de ce plan d'adaptation au changement climatique. Au-delà de ça aussi, il y a la stratégie nationale de sécurité climatique. Et je pense que c'est le CGIAR qui a accompagné le Burkina pour pouvoir faire cette stratégie. Il propose aussi des solutions. Et l'ensemble des projets et programmes qui doivent intervenir peuvent aussi prendre ça comme référentiel et proposer des actions qui permettent de lutter contre la dégradation des terres et trouver une solution au phénomène de migration que les populations trouvent comme solution pour pouvoir échapper aux difficultés. Bon, ça, c'était au plan national. Maintenant, au niveau local, tous ces documents sont ramener au niveau local pour que les populations puissent s'approprier. Donc, on a les plans communaux de développement. Au niveau communal, il y a des plans de développement qui doivent prendre en compte ces documents stratégiques qu'on a élaborés. Il y a les plans régionaux de développement et ces documents stratégiques aussi doivent prendre pour pouvoir intégrer les éléments qu'il faut. Et tous les projets et programmes qui interviennent, soit dans les communes ou dans les régions, doivent pouvoir prendre ces documents comme référentiels pour pouvoir trouver des solutions. Donc, comme on dit, l'ensemble des projets et programmes au Burkina doivent s'inspirer de tout ce qui est comme solutions proposées par ces documents stratégiques. Donc, actuellement, nous avons quelques projets qui luttent contre ça. On a des projets qui ont déjà fait. On a un projet Reclim qui est actuellement résidence climatique. On a un projet Dryland, tout ça développé par le ministère en charge de l'environnement, et des projets aussi de mobilisation de la ressource en eau. Donc, bon, c'est notre approche comme ça au Burkina pour pouvoir restaurer les terres et permettre aux populations de rester sur place et produire et éviter le phénomène de la migration qui dépeuple les régions et qui joue beaucoup sur l'économie. Voilà, merci.
Merci beaucoup pour vos réponses. I really like that also, apart from setting the problem, you also started looking at some of the solutions and the actions that are being taken by the Ministry of Sustainable Development of Burkina and the government. So first of all, he mentioned about the issue related to land degradation and drought. Burkina is one of the most vulnerable countries located in the Sahel to these issues. You mentioned also about the different climate impacts, especially the drought, and how that's been linked with the food insecurity, with the water insecurity, and the loss of livelihoods, right? And that some of these people then decide to relocate to other areas. They move, they migrate, especially to the south, to other parts of the country where they can try to find more economic opportunities that they are losing in the areas where they live. And in some of these areas, you mentioned that there are some tensions sometimes with the local populations, right? In some of those cities, the people that migrate to the south, there is additional pressure on natural resources, and then that is exacerbating in some cases some conflicts and tensions between the host population and the migrants themselves. Also, Mr. Lazar also mentioned a study from IOM that was conducted in Burkina, in the northern region of Bokin municipality, and also in the northern central region of Mané. A few years ago, in 2019, that precisely looked at how also migration is an adaptation strategy that allows people to sort of move from a vulnerable situation to a more favorable situation, so that it should also be seen as a way to adapt to these climate impacts, including land degradation, including the issues related to drought and desertification. The study showed that most of these migrants move internally, but then to the south, but then some also to other countries in the region, such as Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana, and that most of them, around 80%, are young men between 18 and 80 years. Then looking at what Burkina is doing, there are several policies mentioned at national and subnational level. Some which, as Mr. Lazar mentioned, are aimed at stopping, sort of trying to stop the issue of the increasing desertification. Others looking at how to address the issues and the problems that are posed by desertification and the droughts and land degradation, so more towards the adaptation side. And others that look at how to integrate everything, also looking at issues related to peace, security, which would be the case of the climate security national strategy that you mentioned, and that indeed CGIAR and UNDP were honored to support. more specifically in relation to the efforts for the adaptation. You mentioned the NAP, the National Adaptation Plan, then also the nationally determined contributions. Also looking at adaptation, which were recently submitted by Burkina, and also the National Plan for Economic and Social Development that looks at the issue from also the perspective of rural development and economic opportunities for the people that are suffering from this risk in a holistic approach, and also establishing some of the needs from Burkina in order to be able to implement some of these actions. And then also Mr. Lazar also mentioned that some of these policies are also being developed at the local level. So I understand that it's mainly municipal and departmental level in the country to account for the different realities and specificities in terms of vulnerability, in terms of adaptation options, and the climate risk that the people suffer, and that of course it's different from region to region. And some of these policy instruments that have been recently launched include the regional plans at a municipal level for adaptation, and also that the local governments have also been supported in integrating climate change, both adaptation and also mitigation in the local development plans. I hope more or less I captured your intervention correctly. Now, I would also like for the other three panelists to dive deeper into the actions, maybe also looking at what has been mentioned before, what similar efforts have your countries been developing, maybe others that Mr. Lazar has not mentioned. So maybe we could start with the representative from Guatemala, from the Ministry of Environment of Guatemala. Could you please tell us a bit about the actions that Guatemala has been putting forward with regards to human mobility, desertification, climate? Thank you.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Como lo mencioné antes, en Guatemala justo es un gran reto entender toda esa dinámica entre la vinculación de la degradación de los recursos naturales y su relación con las personas y con la movilidad humana. Así que desde Guatemala pues estamos y entendemos que primero tenemos que sensibilizar a los distintos sectores, a las distintas instituciones públicas, a la sociedad civil. Así que desde el año 2022, junto con el CGIAR y otros actores, hemos estado apostando justo en hacer esa sensibilización. Empezamos con unos foros nacionales, empezamos con un foro nacional en el 2022, en la cual pues busca vincular o entender la movilidad humana con su relación con el cambio climático, con la desertificación, con las sequías. Y pues esa relación, pues vimos o repetimos el tema en el año 2022, 2023, 2024, y también con intención de aterrizarlo a nivel local. Hemos hecho este año 3 actividades, 2 foros departamentales, que es el siguiente nivel local en Guatemala, y y una tercera acción que es un curso en la cual pues se fortalece y se sensibiliza a las autoridades, en la cual pues esto se está haciendo con el Ministerio de Relaciones Exteriores, el Ministerio de Ambiente que somos nosotros, la OIM que también está apoyando, el Instituto de Migración, y pues ahí está también el CGIAR y otros actores que han estado apoyando en esta pues dinámica de sensibilización. Además de eso, pues también tenemos otros temas que entendemos que bien el tema estratégico es muy importante. Acá lo mencionaron los colegas, que hay unos documentos estratégicos. Nosotros estamos apostando también en la actualización del Plan Nacional de Adaptación al Cambio Climático en el capítulo Movilidad Humana. Pues queremos que ese tema se fortalezca y en la siguiente actualización lo vamos a fortalecer aún más. También tenemos el reto de la elaboración de una política de certificación, o en el contexto de certificación. Sabemos que el tema de suelos es un gran reto de la tenencia, el cambio de uso del suelo tiene esa gran dinámica o ese reto, así que estamos haciendo esa articulación de temas en la movilidad humana. Además de eso, también hemos estado identificando y fortaleciendo unos documentos, unos proyectos que queremos identificar cómo esta vinculación de la movilidad humana se entiende a nivel nacional. Así que buscamos a través de una generación de unos proyectos que hemos estado fortaleciendo cómo se puede identificar o entender esa dinámica de movilidad humana a nivel nacional y también un tema de cohesión social que tiene que ver mucho con los recursos naturales y su importancia en la economía nacional, familiar y pues ese aspecto social muy importante. Además de un aspecto ahí de un aspecto de entender cómo el carbono orgánico puede llegar a entender o a fortalecer todos estos temas. Lo dejaría por allí.
Thank you, Mr. Hector. Muchas gracias. So the first thing that Hector mentioned is that the first steps that Guatemala has taken on this regard is to raise awareness on the topic, considering that many people, including within the different agencies of the government, maybe were not a few years back so well aware of these realities, especially with regards to climate-related migration. So there were a series of forums in 2022, 2023, and also this year in 2024 at the national level that were co-hosted by IOM and also CGIAR and other government entities. Then this year there were also forums at the departmental level, which were trying to bring the discussion more to the local, municipal, and departmental level. And the idea was also to bring some insights from these forums into the update of the policy frameworks that exist and that are being currently updated. Hector mentioned the National Action Plan for Climate Change of Guatemala, the PANC, which already, as he mentioned, includes a chapter on human mobility and climate change with some specific objectives. And one of those objectives was precisely to raise awareness among government institutions. That's where he framed the activities that have been conducted in terms of the forums and the events, but also a training course that has been developed with the Ministry of Environment, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, CGIAR, and IOM to also raise awareness and discuss more specifically how this topic can be included in the different policy instruments. So more looking towards the policy making process. And that was a collaborative effort with many different government entities, which is aimed to continue in the following years. And then lastly, also the desertification policy, which is currently in the process of making one desertification policy. In this case, it's not the update, but rather a new one, since the country doesn't have a desertification policy yet, and they also they're exploring how to integrate human mobility and migration into it. I believe also that in Egypt recently there was some similar efforts being taken, such as the Aswan, the forum in Aswan. So then I will love to hear more from Hala Jusri and whether there have been similar efforts being developed in Egypt with regards to raising awareness, capacity building, and similar actions also at the policymaking level. Thank you.
Sure. Sure, we have definitely awareness towards using less chemicals, so we're combating pollution as a source of desertification causes. This is really an asset. We're trying to move to organic agriculture more. We're trying to make awareness and encouraging all farmers to go for that carbon emission, decreasing of carbon emission, and we give some entities give awards for farmers who are working in these issues. Definitely, we have projects for vaccination of land dunes, because this is one of the desertification causes as well. We have a strategy for a women's strategy in Egypt, where we work on the empowerment of women economically, socially, politically, as well as social protection. And these social protection programs in Egypt, we are covering children, people who are disabled, and elderly as well. So we are trying not to leave anyone behind. And there is a lot of attention is getting to women, youth, children, disabled, as well as elderly. So so those people will be able to combat desertification, if they are empowered. But if they don't have the knowledge, they will not be able to do anything if they don't have the skills. And we also open the door for loans, and we provide technical assistance also as well. So, we are giving them all the factors to be able to combat desertification from Egypt, from our resources. But the point here that we all need to get more attention to Rio +3 conventions, because lots of attention is being given to climate change, and a lot less, attention is given to desertification and biodiversity. So let's, get a call from here, to the other 2 conventions to have the synergy that would get them all together to be able to help the developing countries as much as developed countries, because they give more attention to climate change because it's the negative effects go to them, but us, we don't get that much attention. And if you would see how much money your respectable countries, our respectable countries, get out of UNCCD convention, very, very poor. And this is not our expectations, So if we will call for a real synergy between the 3 conventions, I think we will all gain from that. During each COP, they have to be present. They have to be present. They have to work together so we can also work together. So this is something I hope we can come up with this respectable panel, as one of our recommendation for the next COPs, either COP 30 in Brazil, or COP 17 in Mongolia. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So really important. I completely agree with you that the necessary integration of the 3 Rio conventions, right? And precisely this year, in a very short period of time, we've been participating in the 3 of them. And I would definitely love to hear from Mr. Masla Ali, what efforts has Somalia taken on this regard, and whether some of these also have aligned across the 3 Rio conventions.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Actually, Somalia has been taking some measures, to combat land degradation and to adapt, climate change, as well as desertification. recently as a national level, the government have, issued with some frameworks and policies like climate finance policy, which we haven't had before, as well as 2023, we have, introduced the first Environmental Management Act, which we have established and approved by the parliament. And there are also some initiatives which, our president have announced, for example, Somali Greener, which was intended, to combat, desertification. He was, promised that 10 million trees. So, and it's still, these initiatives have been, getting more attention for international organizations, including, what's called a Green Great Wall Initiative is from Senegal to the, East Africa countries like Somalia and Djibouti. So these issues have been addressed. Also, in that parallel, there have been, conflicts which have been caused, human mobility. So either for conflict caused by, resource scarcity or, civil war. So, and the Ministry of Interior of Somalia have initiated, conflict resolution programs to stabilize the, the people who have been immigrated for their society. In parallel that there was, international efforts which have been supported by some societies to give them humanitarian assistance to, give them the livelihoods they needed. Although it was not effective, but also, it was actually took part, to reduce, the movement of the society. So this was efforts which have been done so far, as well as Somalia have banned most of the problem which you have caused by the desertification, because we have been using a charcoal as energy to cook. So the people, they have been cutting the trees to get income and sell, and export even the other countries like Gulf of Arab. So, and the government have stopped with support for United Nations. And now we are, doing some rehabilitations for the land was degraded. So in that regard, even the Ministry of Environment have, initiated, alternative energy for the societies to give them, cheap gas for cooking, so that, and it have already, distributed thousands of, households for cheap gas. These efforts have been taking place, as well as, there was environmental pollution is like, we have banned, one-time plastic use, which was government have issued a degree to stop it, and already the people have also adapted, and there was also, awareness programs, which was, the ministry and the UNDP and the international partners have been giving attention, because the people, they don't understand that how environment is important for us, and even some of people, they don't understand that the climate change, so they don't believe them. So we need to give them, awareness programs to get, their attention, and to give them, a priority for, because if they understand how important of the environment and climate change, so they may take, some, steps to stop, the things that can be destroyed or planet. So these efforts have been, taking place recently. So also, there are, in the rural areas, there was, some, campaigns that to give the, the farmers, to teach them smart agriculture, so that to get their livelihoods, that because there is, long-term droughts in our country. And, you see that some people, they haven't get, their farmers for some foodies or, maize or something like that for long time. So they have run away for their farmers, but now they have been given, some, equipment like solar systems, which can be used for irrigation system to stay in, their villages. And also, there was, some agro cities which can be adapted by climate. So, and which is useful for, to get, food for them. So these efforts have been taking place. On the other side, there was 50% of Somali people are dependent on livestock. So they are agro-pastoralist or, pastoralistic. So that, and the grass, some areas have of grassy and there is, there is no grass some areas. So that there is some initiatives which have been, some organizations and, businessmen have been created, to create, grass for the, livestock to survive during the, droughts. So, and now we have seen some, successful areas which have been, the people, they have stored, some grasses for their animals, and they have become more resilient than before. So these things have been, very, it was very, very, successful efforts which have been taken place in my country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yes, sure. I was actually going to say if now we can maybe open the floor to comment.
Thank you very much for the insights from Somalia. And I think you can easily convince Somalian people to practice, to have the good practices. Just when you tell them the economical reward on them. But if you will talk in an environmental language, they will not say Amin, they will only say Amin when you will tell them how much money they will gain, from practicing the good practices or, the smart practices. This is the only way, they will be convinced. Now, but you're going to tell them desertification, climate change, conservation. This does not have food in their mouth and you see what I mean, of course. And I bet all of us, we agree on that. So that will put some efforts on us, to value the practice into money. Like if you're going to do this, you will get that amount of money. If you stop doing that, you will reward on the short run, on the medium term, and on the long term. You will get a real good money. So thank you.
Thank you. That's true. Actually, the people, they don't care about that. The environment.
Yes.
Mostly in Africa, because they are looking for something to survive.
Yes.
So
Understood.
because so you see that many people, they are doing a business to cutting trees, and they don't understand that what will happen, when they cut the trees. And in Somali tradition, we use the trees, to have a conferences and sleep under trees when there is a hot, sun. So there are more, beneficial things. But in economically, you can tell them, the people, they will get something in return when they do something about the environment. So this was some initiatives actually, and actually the community, actually they need, to give them, the authority to have, to participate in everything, because they feel that they have owned these things. So we need to teach them. This is yours, not the others. Yeah? So if you save them, you will be safe too. So thank you.
I don't know if any of the other panelists want to make an intervention on this regard. And if not, then just maybe, yeah. I think that both of them can understand, but they would just prefer to speak in their own languages. Yeah. If
Celle de l'Égypte a dit il faut une synergie entre les trois conventions. Bon, dans mon pays, la population est beaucoup analphabète, ne sont pas allés suffisamment à l'école. Environ 70% ne sont pas allés à l'école. Lorsque tu les demandes qu'est-ce que le changement climatique, il ne peut que te donner une explication du changement climatique par rapport à la désertification. Il va dire qu'il n'y a plus d'arbres, voilà, il fait plus chaud, il n'y a plus d'eau. Voilà. Donc, on ne peut pas ne pas mettre les trois conventions ensemble. Le changement climatique, la manifestation, c'est la sécheresse, c'est les inondations, c'est la perte de la biodiversité. Donc, franchement, comme elle a dit, il faut que les trois conventions travaillent ensemble pour qu'on puisse avoir les résultats, parce que c'est tellement lié. Deux, comme il a dit aussi, les populations sont des populations rurales. Elles font recours au bois de chauffe pour pouvoir satisfaire leurs besoins. Donc, ils coupent les arbres pour avoir le bois de chauffe, soit pour construire ou pour d'autres usages. Or, tout ça, ce sont des facteurs qui contribuent à créer la désertification parce qu'il n'y a plus de couverture d'arbres. Donc, c'est vraiment aussi œuvrer à ce que les populations puissent changer et avoir de bonnes pratiques. Je pense qu'il y a beaucoup d'approches actuellement, l'agroécologie, l'agroforesterie, pour montrer qu'on peut cultiver, en même temps planter des arbres sur le même espace sans qu'il n'y ait une concurrence trop entre la culture annuelle et la culture des arbres. Donc, c'est un peu pour ajouter, pour dire que vraiment, c'est les bonnes pratiques de gestion durable des terres qui peuvent nous permettre de pouvoir de lutter contre la désertification et aussi atténuer les effets du changement climatique. Voilà, merci.
Okay, so Mr. Lazar basically agreed with the two previous interventions. First, it was definitely necessary to work across the three Rio conventions. Then also with how we translate all these discussions that are sometimes a bit too technical into words that can be easily understood and convey the message easily to the people, especially considering, as he mentioned, that some people, especially in rural areas, don't even have the chance to go to school. So it's not, we shouldn't be talking about technicisms, but rather, you know, there is no water, and you know, then in more simple words, basically, not complicated terminologies, right? So it can be understood and bring the discussion into those terms. And then finally, the same in terms of the practices, right? And the economic, to link it back to the economy, right? Okay, we shouldn't be cutting trees. There are other practices such as sustainable agriculture, agroforestry, that can be also economically viable and can support livelihoods. So to really show people that this has also a tangible economic outcome and that it's also good for the environment, rather than just telling them that this is good for the environment and that's it, but it's also good for the economy of the people, right? If I understood correctly, more or less those were the three things. Hector, maybe if you want to comment anything or give final remarks on towards the future, what's needed next with regards to desertification, climate, and human mobility.
Bueno, considerando y definitivamente escuchando a los colegas, todas las experiencias de los diferentes países, de las diferentes culturas, de los diferentes continentes, creo que es, y todos los contextos que incluso en esa misma convención se mencionan, hay diferentes enfoques, hay diferentes posturas. Yo creo que es inevitable y definitivamente uno de los mensajes que deben de existir acá y que resaltan es justamente la integración no solamente de los enfoques, sino que las tres convenciones, de las regiones. Así que yo creo que es definitivamente el tema de integración en un contexto global, es una de las claves para atacar y trabajar todos esos temas desde la brecha entre las comunidades hasta los temas que hablamos acá que son de importancia a nivel global. Así que sería justo la integración y reducir y tener el reto de lo que hablamos a nivel global y que aterriza a nivel local. Así que esa sería definitivamente es una de las claves que debemos de trabajar y pensar que pues todos somos no solamente un país, un continente, sino que un planeta.
Very inspiring last words. Basically, again, back to the three Rio conventions and the need to align the work that we are doing here also with what the discussions and the objectives and targets that have been set in Baku and also in Cali, and also the need to work together also between the different countries and also the different regions, right? Also to finally reduce the brecha, the gap between the local realities and the people that are the ones suffering all these issues, the desertification, the climate, the human mobility, with all the discussions, the big discussions around the conventions at the global level. So really the need to bridge, to narrow this gap that you mentioned it's a bit wide, to be able to support the communities in a more strong way. Yeah, I think more or less. Any last words or remarks looking at the future and what's needed next?
Yes, actually, thank you. For the support of Rio Convention, actually, I think that we have been giving more priority UNFCCC or greenhouse gas emissions. So it was bigger than everything when it's compared to the biodiversity and land degradation. And in our country, we are not producing much greenhouse gases emissions because we are not the industrial country. So only there is, less, the lowest rate for, we are polluting, our environment because of desertification. And I hope this will be help us, to combat, the desertification and plant many trees, to also reduce the greenhouse gases emissions in my country. And how I hope also there are, millions of biodiversity in our country. We have lost, many animals due to the consequence of long droughts, as well as conflicts, because even the animals they can run away from when they have seen conflicts. We have been wild animals near Kenyan border, but they have immigrated also, as the humans have immigrated also. So in the future, I hope we can create a sustainable ecosystem which can be manageable and actually restore as we have been before. And thank you very much.
Last word, it's a thank you for CGIAR. Last word, thanks for you all. Thanks for all the respectable panel. I'm really proud to be among you all. And we have to look for a South cooperation that will strengthen our capacities. And we are always extend our hands for our friends, to work with. And also, I'm going to take this stage here and come up with we need a roster for scientists who are working in land deterioration, with water scarcity, with the zoology, with the plantation, social and economical scientists to work among all the developing countries to help each other through this through this roster. You can easily find someone who works for land deterioration, who speaks your language, who can help you in this. We can also address the NGOs who are working in this, the private sector who can support this, the big entities, private entities that can have a social responsibility that work for the South cooperation. We can do lots of things, but we need the willingness, we need the institutional way of doing so, and we need always to have hand to hand. This way, we are backing each other. This way, we can support each other. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. So last but not least, Mr. Hector, would you like to make some last, oh, wait, no, sorry, my bad, Mr. Glacier.
Ce que je peux dire, les scientifiques ont beaucoup écrit sur la thématique de dégradation des terres, de sécheresse. Les solutions sont là. Au niveau communautaire, les populations ont appris à s'adapter. Il y a des techniques chez nous, au Burkina, il y a la technique du ZAI, il y a la demi-lune, il y a la RNA qui est venue de d'autres pays qu'on a adopté. Il y a plein de pratiques au niveau communautaire, au niveau local. Bon, peut-être le problème, ce sont souvent les ressources. Comme la dame de l'Égypte a dit, c'est la convention la plus pauvre. Donc, c'est vraiment la mobilisation des ressources pour que toutes les solutions que les scientifiques ont trouvées ou que les solutions qui viendront après proposées par les scientifiques, qu'on puisse avoir suffisamment de moyens pour pouvoir les mettre ensemble. Et comme elle a dit, la coopération sud-sud, qu'on puisse aussi développer ça. Parce que souvent, ce n'est pas une problématique de d'autres pays. Mais le sud, non, on se sent concerné par ça. Donc, c'est de mettre maintenant la main dans la main, comme elle a dit, pour qu'on puisse mutualiser les efforts afin de trouver des solutions à ce fléau de dégradation des terres, de sécheresse et de désertification. Parce que ça se suit. Les terres se dégradent, la sécheresse s'installe et la désertification en fin du processus. Voilà, merci.
Donc, I mean, the scientists have done a lot of research, and there's already evidence on what works. The people themselves, right, as you mentioned, already know what needs to be done. In many cases, they know what actions need to be taken to tackle these issues. But the problem is that even if they know what needs to be done, they don't have the resources, they don't have the means to do it, right? And you link that with the previous comments on the lack of resources from specifically this convention to combat desertification, and how that is a major issue in order to really be able to develop those actions, right? That both the scientists and the people know that work, but without the resources, then it's not going to be possible. And that hopefully also the countries that suffer from all this risk, where we can see the climate vulnerabilities, the human mobility, and that are most affected by these issues, should also work together and strengthen the South-South cooperation between them. So thank you very much for the panel. I think it was very interesting to have a bit of a different discussion, maybe Guatemala